Hello everyone and welcome. I wanted to make an introduction video to Unity because some of you guys have bought my courses on Udemy and may be complete beginners. So I just wanted to make sure every one of you understood what Unity was. Okay, so after downloading Unity Hub, this is what you see. Okay, so on the left side, you have your projects tab where you've got all of your projects right here. You've got the installs tab where you can select and install any Unity version. So when installing a Unity version, I advise you to select an LTS version. So it's the long-term support version, okay? So you've got some other versions right here, but they might not be as stable as the LTS versions, okay? In the pre-releases tab, you've got beta and alpha versions too. They generally contain some new features, but they are still in test mode. So if you want to test them out, you can still install them. Okay? So select a version and install it. In our case, like when working on mobile games, you want to make sure that you select Android build support and iOS build support if you wish to publish on iOS. Okay? So you should also download Visual Studio Community like 2019, which is the case now in 2022. Yeah. And if you want to make a game for Windows, you can still download the Windows build support, and same thing for Mac and Linux. Okay. And I think that's it here. All right. So next, you've got the Learn tab. In this tab, you've got a bunch of Unity tutorials where you can learn new things. Okay, so you've got cool things like hair simulations, a course on lighting too. So yeah, feel free to have a look at them and they might be very useful. All right, next we've got the community tab. We've got a bunch of links that redirect you to some Unity websites, and it might be useful too. So you've got the asset store, which you will end up using a lot when making mobile games because you can't do everything like coding, making the assets, sounds, and so on. So I advise you to use this website from time to time. All right, so I'm gonna make a new project now. To do so, I'm gonna go back to the projects tab and select new project. All right. So at the top right here, you can select the Unity version you want to work with. So in my case, I'm going to work with the 2021.3.10F. So as you can see, it's an LTS version. So long-term support again. And here you are given a bunch of templates you can start from. Okay, so we've got the 2D mobile monetization. If you want to learn how to integrate monetization, AR, VR, and so on. So feel free to experiment with these two. In our case, we are going to start with a 3D URP template. Okay? All right. On the right, we can rename our project. So let's call it YouTube tutorial. Okay, perfect. Let's create the project now. Okay, so now Unity will launch the project. It might take some time, but be patient because when making games, you will have to be patient. All right, guys, so now that Unity has started, there is a small pop-up window that shows up. So it's telling you to update your Unity editor if you wish to do so. I don't want to do so. So perfect. The first thing that you see when launching Unity is a bunch of windows. So it can be disturbing at first, but bear with me, it's very simple. Okay, so let's start from the left. Okay, so first off, you have the hierarchy here. It's just a collection of all of the elements you have in your game, okay, in the scene. So Unity works with a system of scenes right here. So you can expand and collapse the scene, okay? And a scene is simply a collection of game objects, okay? Every element in the scene is a game object. So the main camera is a game object, the directional light is a game object too, and the global volume is also a game object. All right, so let's start by the main camera first. So when you select a game object, you can see that you can change some of its properties in the scene view. So the scene view is just a visual representation, let's say, of the hierarchy, okay? It allows you to move objects around, rotate them with the rotate tool, and so on, okay? Perfect. So let's first focus on the camera. So I'm going to select the camera in the hierarchy and press F in the scene view. You can press F twice to zoom in a bit or zoom out, okay, on the same game object. Perfect. So on the left of the scene view, you have a little toolbar that you can move around, okay? So you can place it wherever you want. Perfect. So I'm going to first select the hand tool. The hand tool allows you to pan in the scene view, okay? Like so. Perfect. Can be useful. Nice. Next, we have the move tool, okay? So it allows you to move the current selected game object. So for instance, I have the main camera selected now, and I can move it along the x-axis, the y-axis, and the z-axis. And you can also move it on a plane. So if you click on the blue square right here, you can move it along the z-plane, like so. Nice. All right. Next, we've got the rotate tool. So the rotate tool allows you to rotate a game object however you wish. So by clicking on the red arc right here, you can rotate along the x-axis, same thing for the z-axis and the y-axis. Okay, perfect. After that, we have the scale tool, but for the camera, it doesn't make sense. So we are gonna have a look at it later on. Same thing for the rect tool, and the transform tool allows you to do all of the previous transformations with one tool. Okay, so you can scale, you can rotate, and you can move. And you can move like so. Nice. So I don't know if you noticed, but while I was playing around with the camera right here, the values in the inspector tab or inspector window were changing, okay? Basically, let's first collapse the camera component and have a look at the transform component here. So you've got the position, the rotation, and the scale of the current selected game object, okay? So for instance, let's reset the position on the x-axis. So let's say 0, y-axis, and z-axis. All right, maybe let's make it -10 just so that we can see it. And by clicking on your mouse wheel, like the mouse button 3, you can pan around, okay? Like so, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to reset the rotation also and the scale of the camera. Let's say 1, 1, 1. So imagine that we were moving around things and so on, and we want to reset the transform of the camera. You can click on the 3 little dots right here and select reset. Perfect, right? So the camera is not visible anymore. So can someone tell me how to focus on the camera? Which key should I press? F, you're right. I don't know if you said it, but you're right. Awesome. So now we have seen the hierarchy window, the scene window, and the inspector window. Perfect. Just to sum up. So the hierarchy contains all of the game objects that you are working with, okay? The scene is a visual representation of these game objects. And the inspector window allows you to edit the settings of the current selected game object with more precision, okay? So you can have a view of all of the components attached to that specific game object. Okay, so next, let's have a look at the game window. So the game window is basically just what the camera sees. So you have a little camera preview right here. So it's basically a preview of the game window. So let's first create a cube. So I'm going to right click in the hierarchy, select 3D object, cube. All right. So Unity has created a cube for us. So I can zoom out with the mouse wheel and zoom into. All right. So I'm going to select the camera, and for the moment, the camera is at the same position as the cube. So it won't be able to see it. So I'm going to drag it around, maybe a bit back, like so. Perfect. And now when switching to the game view, we can see our cube. Awesome. Let's try and rotate it a bit along the x-axis, let's say, along the y-axis. When you hover your mouse above the Y letter here, you can rotate, like by clicking and dragging. Perfect. And yeah, now we can scale, by the way. So let's have a look at our scale tool. Here it is. Sorry. Okay, I'm going to zoom in a bit. So I'm going to scale the object along the y-axis. I can also scale it along the z-axis and the x-axis. You can also scale it proportionally by clicking on the little cube at the center and drag. Okay? Perfect. So now let's select our cube and reset its transform like we've done for the camera. Awesome, here it is. The cube has 4 components. So the first one is the transform component that we've already experimented with, okay? The next one is the mesh filter. So every 3D object in Unity should have a mesh filter. It's basically containing the mesh data. So the vertices, the triangles, the normals, the UVs, and so on. So next we have a mesh renderer component. So this allows us to actually see the object in the scene or in the game, because if you disable it by hitting the checkbox right here, we can't see it either in the scene view nor in the game view. Okay, let's re-enable it and now we can see it. Awesome. Then you have a bunch of settings that we can experiment with. We also have a box collider that is really useful when dealing with physics. Okay, but now let's have a look at the material property of the mesh renderer. Any object you want to be able to see in Unity should have a material. So let's try first and remove the material from the cube. It turns pink. So this specific pink color or magenta means that a 3D object doesn't have any material, and that's bad. Okay, so let's create a material for our guy. First off, we are going to select the Assets folder, and we are now dealing with the project window or the project tab, right? Nice. So the project tab is basically a collection of all of the assets that you've got in your project. So you can right click right here, show it in the Explorer, and if you open the Assets folder, it shows you all of the elements you've got in your project. Perfect. So let's go back to Unity now. And I'm going to create a new material for our cube. So I'm going to right click, select create and select material. So let's call it cube material. Awesome. To apply this material to our cube, I'm just going to drag it and drop it either in the scene view, so directly on the cube, or on the cube in the hierarchy. And here we go. Perfect. So now you can change the values or the properties of this new material. So you can select it right here, or you can select the cube and have a look at the material right here. So I'm going to collapse all of the other components right here. Perfect. Again, here you have a bunch of settings that you can play with. I'm just going to change the color to show you that it's working like in real time. Awesome. Nice. Perfect. You are now starting to be a pro in Unity, right? Awesome. So next thing regarding the windows or the tabs, you can drag them and like dock them wherever you want. So you can dock the inspector right here, for instance, the console right here. It can be a floating window. You can maximize it by clicking here, you can minimize it, and so on. But if you happen to mess around with your windows like so, like it's a complete mess, imagine that, I don't know, maybe your cat stepped on the keyboard, your dog stepped on the mouse, and it's a complete mess. You can still rearrange the windows as you wish, or just select the default layout right here and select default. It brings back the default layout. So if you have a layout that you like, so for instance, if you like the inspector right here next to the hierarchy, you can still save this layout. So you can select default right here and save layout. Okay, give it a name and save it. So there are a bunch of other windows that you can have a look at right here in the window menu. So you've got the animation window, for instance, that you are going to use when dealing with animations. You also have the animator. If you are a filmmaker, you have the sequencing timeline. Okay, so Unity is basically a Swiss knife for creators. Okay. So yeah, that was a basic introduction to Unity, and I hope you liked it. If you have some ideas or some comments, make sure to leave them. And if you want to deep dive into making mobile games, make sure to have a look at my Udemy courses in the description. So see you there, and hope to teach you a lot. And have fun making games.